In the words of Andrew Geim, human progress has always been driven by a sense of adventure and unconventional thinking. If you've seen our previous episodes of An Hour with LawSikho, you will know that most successful lawyers are those who chose the path often not taken. Hello everyone, you're watching An Hour with LawSikho. I am Aditya, and joining us today is one such free-spirited lawyer who left a top law firm to become an entrepreneur with a dream to provide access to justice to all, Mr. Abhyuday Agarwal, co-founder and COO at iPleaders, whose aim in life is to help every law student in making their dreams of a secure legal career come true. Learn all that you want today with Abhyuday. Abhyuday, welcome to An Hour with LawSikho.
Thanks, Aditya, for inviting me to this session. The theme is tremendously close to my heart of having every law student be able to create a secure career for himself or herself and to connect it with what they are passionate about law.
All right. Abhyuday, the very first question is about the most conventional routes that people generally take. The most common idea one has is to delve out into corporate law with a basic idea to get into a law firm. Now, in a law firm, there are various teams in which a student can aim at getting into. What are the most competitive teams, and what are the teams that one can easily target?
So when you're thinking of a law firm job, the conventional theme is corporate, where banking, finance, M&A, general corporate, and capital markets are the standard areas in which you could be absorbed in. But you cannot choose beforehand that where you want to work, because law firms hire in large numbers for these areas, and they will put you wherever there is a need. Places where it is less likely for you to get into can be tax or IP sometimes, even litigation teams inside law firms. These are not so structured in the sense that you have your day zero campus recruitment. So the most number of jobs, 95 to 100% of the jobs will be for corporate law teams. Okay, which means that you will be in one of those four: banking and finance, M&A, general corporate, or capital markets. Okay, and the rest are more unconventional, where competition teams, for example, indirect tax, all of these, where you have to actually sort of figure out your own roadmap to get to the law firm.
All right. Abhyuday, let's say in a couple of law firms, there are a couple of internships that are given to students, and they're asked as to which team they want to work in. Now, if consistently somebody, let's say, is working with real estate team for a prolonged period, and I assume that it's a non-conventional team. So, what are the chances of a law student getting into such a team by continuous internships?
So in my third year, I had applied to Luthra for an internship, and when I was given the internship and I got the confirmation mail in like 48 hours of applying. But when I worked there, I was given the real estate team. So, which was great. I got a lot of interesting work. Okay. But one needs to know that the internship team you are given, whether that connects to a job opening later on. That time it was not so important for me because I was at the end of my third year. Also, even if I wanted to, I couldn't have done a thing about it. So the best thing for me was to continue in that. But it may be that you are working in the real estate team, but where a requirement is in the corporate team. Okay, so you have to keep an eye out for that. And if that happens, you need to discuss internally to shift teams after some period of work, or to take work from multiple teams like that. And you should manage your time. Like, don't expect to be given only 6 or 8 hours of work. You can take extra work for 10 hours, 12 hours, because it's about your career. So make sure you get the work you want to. And in the process, if you have to do some extra work, you should be willing to do it.
All
Aditya,
right.
what else did you ask? Did you ask something else?
So that was exactly the question.
Okay.
Now, let me ask you this: that given the fact that internships are no short way to get a specific team into a law firm, what are the most common and uncommon ways to get knowledge and experience one requires to get into any of these teams, be it conventional team or a non-conventional team?
So let's say you want to work in international tax. Okay, there may be specific tax law firms. There may be the big four CA firms. Okay, or there may be the law firm which has a connection with the big four CA firms. Like, these CA firms have a loosely associated law practice also, which deals with legal matters, which are, and tax lawyers can work there. So these would be your primary areas where these would be your potential recruiters. Now they may not go to campus to hire, they may or may not. Now your job will be to actually develop certain kind of practical exposure in this kind of on the subject matter. So if it's about international tax, you need to know the area inside out, and it's not about just knowing a few sections of income tax act. It will really help if you know why clients, what services clients want. For example, in international tax, withholding tax is a big issue. Okay, how withholding tax works, how double tax agreements work, how to look up a double tax agreement to figure out what needs to be done in a particular transaction, and how to look at double tax agreements of different countries. These kind of skills can be very valuable. The question is now, how do you demonstrate that you have these skills, and how do you acquire these skills? Acquisition can be through trial and error, which can take ages, or you can just use a simple route where there is an online course. Go ahead and take it, learn the skills, so that you are looking at closing the next big gap that is available. You are not reinventing the entire wheel by your own self. Now, once you've done this kind of a course and acquired skill sets, then the idea that you can use is to actually write practical articles, publish them online. You can publish them on iPleaders blog. You can publish articles on your own LinkedIn profile. And so online articles are read much more than articles you write in books. Okay. Sorry, in journals also. And people are more likely to discover you when they Google your name and there's an online article that comes up by authored by you. That really carries a lot of weight. If you hyperlink to your own article which is published online in an email to a recruiter, that will be appreciated. In fact, you can expand your LinkedIn network by sharing your article and taking inputs and feedback from people who are much more senior to you. And this can be a conversation starter. Now, once you acquire this skill, you need to go ahead and write 20, 30, 50 articles on the area you want to work in. Okay, and keep sharing this with people who work in this area. And it's not such a mysterious thing right now to find out who works on what. Although you may be in law school and you are not connected to people who are 5 or 10 years more senior to you, it's very easy to find that through LinkedIn. And as you keep expanding your LinkedIn network, LinkedIn itself gives you smarter suggestions on whom you need to add. So I've seen a lot of law students not focusing on LinkedIn, but it's a good idea to focus on building your LinkedIn network. And based on that, you keep adding people, start conversations by sharing your work. Newspapers report who's worked on the biggest deals. Legally India, Live Law, Bar and Bench also report that in their articles. So you will be able to find who worked on which deal. And just in case you've written on an issue which cropped up in the deal, you can simply share that, listen, this is what I've written. So can I have your feedback on this? And they might be able to share some more inputs with you. When that happens, you really end up establishing a connection with the person you are speaking with. And over time, that person can be your mentor. And these kind of relationships are very useful in future. Okay. Aditya also wanted to have put in a comment about identifying new career options, because this is related. Now, law firms exist in areas which have a very clear demand, market, supply. And let's say, so when the economy liberalized in 1991, after that, really the whole scope and possibility of doing corporate law work and serving clients became really big. And that's when the Indian law firms really started expanding in a major way. And corporate law as a career option emerged in a major way. But that isn't the end of it. And what needs to be done when you think of new career options is to shift your mentality from thinking that I will get a job or I will work under a senior, to looking at what is the kind of work I'd like to do for a client. So you bridge that one link where earlier you're thinking of being a good junior or a good employee and expecting your senior to be able to be the source of your work. You shift from that to directly identifying what the client wants and delivering onto that. If you do that, you can be a great employee, you can be a great junior, you can be a great entrepreneur, you can be a great independent practitioner. Okay, so you can build a law firm, you can build an independent practice, you can build your own litigation chamber. But the idea is that you are able to think of what clients really want. So the way you used to identify this for tax in the example that I gave, you can use this for any other area of law. For example, you can use this for CSR related law. You will have to do some kind of research to figure out what is actually happening in the industry and network with people. The people you network with may not be in law firms, but they may be inside companies, in the company's corporate communications or the responsive corporate responsibility department. I know this because I spoke to certain people and then I figured this out. But anybody can do this. Okay. When you pick your area, you can find out whom to connect with over a period of time. It doesn't happen immediately, but as you keep looking, you will find. So CSR, for example, developing expertise in providing services to people on administering CSR funds, which includes a lot of legal formalities as well. Okay. And another example could be compliance with anti-sexual harassment laws. Other examples, there are countless other examples. You choose an area, you can even choose NCLT litigation, and you can start focusing on that if I want to be a litigator and I want to do NCLT cases, and you will find out, okay, there is insolvency litigation can go there, there is companies related 10, 50 or 5 or 10 areas of litigation will go there. You can really narrow down and build that. So new career options emerge there. You might figure out that certain areas of law are underserved. Okay. And that's where the clients need you. So it is like that even for the big law firms. Like there will be a big law firm which acts in banking and finance transactions primarily for lenders. There may be another law firm which acts primarily for corporates. Now, to the outside market, they are both great banking and finance firms with a big practice, with huge billings. But actually, they are specializing on a certain side of the transaction. And they've been doing so for years and acquiring a lot of insights based on that. Okay, so you can do that starting today for a career option that is relevant now.
All right, Abhyuday. Abhyuday, first, can you please wear your earphones? My voice is echoing.
Okay, that will take time.
In the meantime, I'll put forward the question. Yeah, just turn off your microphone for the meantime. Yeah. So my question is that one of the major problems in identifying a specific career area that I feel is the knowledge gap that individuals have. For example, the college do not serve the necessary knowledge for individuals to figure out what different areas they want to delve into or they want to get into. How to bridge that gap is a major question for many of us who are watching An Hour With LawSikho right now. How do you identify those areas, or how do you identify where to get that knowledge from for getting into various genres of law?
So there are two aspects to your question, Aditya. One is how do you figure out which is the area you are passionate about? And the second is that once you figured it out, how do you go about developing expertise in that area?
Exactly.
How to go about developing expertise in that area, to an extent I have discussed. When I said you find out what's coming in the news, find out the people involved, connect with them through LinkedIn, start researching and writing on those areas so that you have a ground to connect with people on. Okay. So that is the part you do when you figure out what you're passionate about. But what do you do before that, right? So many people get naturally attracted to a certain area of law when they're studying in law school. Okay, that is great if you have clarity about it, but many people avoid career options merely because they have a certain notion about it which they may have heard from somebody. Maybe some senior said that working in a law firm is really stressful. Okay. And maybe you will find it out to be the same after many years, but maybe you still are passionate about it and you want to discover it for yourself. So in that case, you should totally go for it. Now, in the initial years of law school, there will be so many subjects you are not exposed to in the first place. You don't know whether you want to study corporate law in your first year. Okay, so for example, for me, I was doing everything in the same way. Like I was equally passionate towards human rights, refugee law, as I was towards corporate law or litigation. So my initial areas of interest were criminal law, and then it was some human rights and international law related work because I was doing moots on that. Then I had to present a paper on that. And later, around the third year, I started developing an interest in corporate law. Not because it was exciting at all, okay, but because I thought that it is important to specialize in this, and it was completely intentional and voluntary. Okay, so but what happened with this was that I came to know of a variety of areas of law, and I realized that if I decide to be if you put in a certain amount of effort, you can be good at anything you want. Okay, and analyzing law requires the same set of skills. What is different, however, is identifying Once you analyze law, that's not the end game for a lawyer. We think that that is the end game, because in our heads we have a court situation in mind where we are arguing on what is the correct meaning and interpretation of a provision of law, and what is legal and what is illegal. But when you are actually thinking of a career, at that time you need to look at what is the need in the market connected with law. Maybe some client wants registration services, maybe some client wants advisory work where they want an opinion from you, maybe some client just wants you to talk to them. Okay, like in family law work, you will realize that people just keep calling you, I want a divorce, advise me what to do, now my spouse has done this. And you will end up playing the role of a counselor plus a lawyer. And you can't say that I will only charge this person for the petitions I file in court, because you will realize that 10 times more than that time you are spending on the telephone advising and counseling this person on what to do, and the person doesn't have a professional therapist to go to for this. So you will have to run and manage your practice. And since you claim to be passionate about family law, you will need to figure out a pricing mechanism for this. Okay, so this happens by trial and error. Your analytical skills are the same for all areas of law. Okay, and then you might choose to play that for certain areas, that I will go all out in trying to understand this area of law, I will go all out in trying to understand, let's say, medical laws. Okay, then you basically talk to the different kinds of stakeholders in the market. What you need to do very well is stratify and segment the market. So if you're thinking of medical law, you'll think of hospitals, big hospital, small hospital, polyclinic, doctor, client, like that. Okay, and you will think that what does each party want, where is his or her requirement not being met, is there a legal or a litigation risk that is there, what are they willing to pay for. So you have to try different kinds of things. Like in college, we were trying this concept, and this was predecessor of iPleaders. Predecessor of the education business of iPleaders was legal risk management, which is now a subject we're creating a course on, and many risk management companies and the big four are actually offering services around risk management. But legal risk management was not a legal advisory firm, but it was basically a managerial input or a strategic input on how you can reduce and eliminate legal risk. This is something we tried back then, and it wasn't rewarding for us, so we shifted to another business strategy. But we started learning that and applying it in different areas. So that is what I mean by trial and error. Anything in your head might just come up and it might appeal to you. And some things, when you try out, it will work, and some things you try out, they won't work. So you have to do this trial and error by speaking to the different stakeholders and figuring out what's there. And you'll have to risk, like you might have to do free work for somebody to understand whether this is worth paying for. And don't back off saying that I am spending so much time during my exams and moot court competitions, and now this person is not even willing to pay me anything, and how should I do this? Because first time you do it for free, second time you will know what to charge, how much to charge, and why to charge. So
All right, Abhyuday. That there are some great advices for everybody. My next question to you is that we are currently living in an age where technology has entered almost every facet of life. However, India in particular is still lagging behind to catch up with various cyber laws and laws related to it. Do you think cyber law has a bright future? And in case yes, then what are the various genres that one can enter into if they're looking forward to make a career in a tech space?
so cyber law definitely has a bright future. What people end up doing with it is limiting it to the Information Technology Act. Okay, and cyber law goes really all over the place, because you have Internet of Things coming up, you have GDPR in Europe, and that impacts international businesses which are India based. Like all tech apps which are globally accessible will have something to do with GDPR, which is General Data Protection Regulation. It's a new regulation in Europe, passed in the EU region for data protection. Um, there were more examples I was giving. So there is online payment and settlement related issues. So all of that needs to be studied together. It's not about the Information Technology Act. I'll give you an example. Somebody, from time to time, we find out people are copying blog posts from our websites. Okay, and then we have to send takedown notices to the intermediary involved, and that is under the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. It is not an Indian law. Okay, So you have to figure out what are the grounds for takedown there. Now, as an Indian lawyer, I may say that I know Indian law, and under Indian law, these are the grounds. Under Indian law, you require a court order for most takedowns, because after Shreya's single case, that is what was interpreted by the Supreme Court. They said that any intermediary or any platform should not apply their own mind to decide whether certain content needs to be taken out. They can rely on a court order. Okay. Even under the copyright rules, that's the requirement, that provisionally they can take down, but then they still need a court order later on. But this is not how it works elsewhere. Intermediaries exercise their own judgment, and sometimes there is also an opportunity to respond. So if we send a takedown notice, the other party may have a right to respond to the intermediary, and then the intermediary can decide. Intermediary could mean anything: Blogspot, WordPress. It could mean Big Rock or India Links, who actually sells you this website domain name. So yeah. So now you need to look at the industry like this. Okay. And if you're looking, for example, we're not used to looking at it like that. We say cyber law, but you go into the world and they say fintech, or they say data security. So you have to really zoom in that why are people saying data security? I know that there is certain privacy and data protection provisions, but what data security? And you have to connect that with why data security becomes important for a company. So it might be one little provision and one rule you are applying all the time in the context of a company's work, but there might be 10 different ways to apply that. And a person who's a manager or sitting in the communications team will not know that. So that person needs to coordinate with you as a lawyer, because you will certify, boss, this is okay, this is not okay. Okay, so that is where your expertise lies in. Now, if you figure out those 50 different situations where data protection is applicable, or data security, certain data security principles apply, it might be the same section you're applying, but guess what, you will land up a well-paying job, and it will have an administrative or implementation related role, okay, from that same legal principle. Compare that with somebody else who says, I know this is the rule in IT Act, but that person will have no clue in an interview to tell a credit card company or a payment gateway that how and when to keep your financial information secure about your customers, how to prevent a data leak, what happens if there's a data leak. It couldn't. And these big payment gateways and big financial companies, they need that kind of training across the board. They need categorization, access related controls, all of that. So it keeps traveling into the domain of management, thinking, strategic thinking, all of that. But you don't have to learn management for this. What you have to learn is, how does this law apply to this guy with this situation? What is your job? Your job is to find the problem, that people are facing. If you find 100 problems, damn good. If you can't solve them, don't worry, but at least find the problems. Then over a period of time, you can solve them. When you find workable solutions, boy, you will be paid for your work.
Abhyuday, we also like to know that what scope does cryptocurrency have in India? Because right now there is no clarity from the government. So will that law develop over a period of time? And if yes, then what is the scope for a lawyer to go ahead and work with these laws of
So I think
such?
over the past few years, Indian law has been so fluid in the regulatory space. Something that is legal today can be illegal tomorrow. It can be taxed the third day, and it could again become legal. So cryptocurrency right now is a shady space. Okay. But I think it makes sense to know how this applies to different businesses. Okay. And if you specialize in it, I'm pretty sure there may be even international opportunities opening up for you. For example, I am not so intimately connected to the cryptocurrency space. I don't invest in cryptocurrencies. I've never done that. But I can give an example of gambling laws. Okay. So gambling per se, you can say at a very broad level, is illegal under Indian law, but that's only the surface of it. There are so many riders, so many exceptions. Nagaland, Sikkim have online gambling related rules. You can have offshore casinos in Goa. West Bengal excludes poker, bridge, and other card games from the ambit of gambling. So there are so many permutations and combinations. And while on the surface it's illegal, and you can't have like an pan India gambling business like you have, for example, Reliance Jio operating pan India, or their outlets, sales outlets, service outlets will be all over the country. Apple will have outlets all over the country. You can't have casinos all over the country. but there will be gambling businesses or in the online gaming industry in select pockets. Okay, now it is for you to identify what is it that can be done and what is it that can't be done. Okay, if you research enough, you can actually get a lot of good work on that. Okay, and I know people who've been doing that in this industry. So
Abhyuday, you
stay
spoke
focused on
about.
it. I'm pretty clear that options are going to emerge and we need to be on top of it.
All right. You spoke that there are a lot of opportunities available, and people can, in fact, go international if they delve into such laws. However, technology, fintech, cryptocurrency laws, the resource material, the knowledge available on it online as well is pretty limited. So, if somebody wants to go ahead and get into such laws, what is the correct place to find the online resources or the resources to gain sufficient knowledge, practical knowledge about it?
So the hard way is to keep struggling, find out one by one issue and work on it. Okay. The simple way is pick up an online course, see the syllabus, see if it meets your need, see if it you have the confidence and enroll. Like we've just launched 2 days back a diploma from LawSikho on cyber laws, fintech, and technology contracts. Okay, and it covers these areas on cryptocurrency as well. It has a short module on cryptocurrency. So these kind of areas you can actually look at. Okay, and you can do such courses and then start off on your own, going deeper and deeper. And the thing to look at when you examine an online course is not whether it provides you answers to all the situations, because that would be spoon feeding, right? What an online course caters to is skilling you enough so that you can jump and fly on your own. Okay, and if a course doesn't do that and it teaches you the theory and it teaches you how just the sections and case law, then it doesn't work, because case law will change tomorrow, regulations will change tomorrow. So what you need to look at is that after completing that online course, will you be skilled to upgrade yourself on your own if need be. Okay, to identify the areas of law that emerge for practice in connection with that theme. Okay, that is what you have to look at, and that is how our courses are designed also. Because tomorrow regulations will change, case there will be different case law. What will we do? So when you come to know about the interest of a stakeholder, about the commercial intent of a party, you come to know about different kinds of contracts, and then you study the applicable law. You know that tomorrow if this law changes, this is how my practice, or this is how I have to update myself. You know that very clearly. Otherwise what happens, what people do usually, especially when you're the really hardworking, enthusiastic gung-ho person, you will see, okay, this was the law then, this is the law now. But what is the implication of that, you will not know. Okay, and that is a problem.
All right, Abhyuday, the next question that I have for you is after the Modi's, Make in India scheme, startups look like the next sweetheart after cricket and TV soaps.
Sorry, startups
What
look
are
like.
the laws? Next sweetheart of India. They look like the next sweetheart after cricket and daily TV soaps. What are the laws that generally a startup guy needs to look at, and how can a law student specialize in something which is as new as startups? Does it have a future? In addition to this, I also have two questions from Kunal Chandriani, which I'll take after this question.
Okay. So I think as a law student, when you are actually learning the nuts and bolts of the law, you decide to go beyond your textbooks. That's the time you actually, startups are the best places to learn about problems from, right? I said figure out a problem. And most startups work on areas where there is their innovations end up leading to a lot of legal problems. For example, this happened with Airbnb, because the laws that are applicable to bed and breakfast and hotel owners, the question becomes, do they apply to Airbnb? And ironically, Airbnb ends up becoming bigger than the largest hotel chains in the world. Okay, so these kind of paradoxes arise. Same thing happened with Uber in Delhi, and it was claiming that it's an aggregator and it's not a taxi provider, doesn't need to register in the radio taxi scheme. Okay, so now imagine when you are working with your friend and he wants to start some kind of a transport business. Okay, like this is how Ola started. When Ola started, its founder used to go to different startup events and pitch Ola, and it was not a local city intra-city service. It was like, if you want, there were two major services: you go outstation or you go to airport. These were the two things he was specializing in. And at that time, a company comes to you and they say, okay, what are the legal issues that would be there? And you're actually going so far into the law and looking at the applicable radio taxi schemes. You look at, okay, how will you divide your relationship with your partner? How will you determine that? And these kind of things can be very interesting and tricky. A simple example is that if you look at your LLP Act, so something that the startups need is a co-founders agreement always. Okay, if you structure the business as an LLP or a company, an LLP agreement or the company's articles of association and memorandum of association will apply. What is interesting to note here is that the Companies Act specifies certain formats and a process to deviate from that format. But when you start practicing, you will not, unless you've looked at this issue, you will not know what is in the standard format and how do I deviate and what are the things I need to deviate from. Now, knowing this will give you a razor sharp approach on how to deal with a partnership dispute. If you want to be a commercial litigator in future, this will be amazing for you. If you want to get into arbitration, again, this will be amazing for you because so many commercial disputes will be arbitrable. If you want to get into just an advisory law firm practice, still this is valuable because you have to write clauses that don't go into litigation and you have to write clauses that work. You can't do something patently illegal. So now working with startups has this benefit because they will tell you the matter, okay, and they may not pay you for it, but the kind of things you will learn will be phenomenal. In my fourth year, Ramanuj and I used to visit Startup Saturday in Calcutta, which is very near NUJS. Their sessions used to happen, I think, on the second Saturday every month. We came to know so much about what problems entrepreneurs face. And since we were studying corporate law that time, we were trying to think about, so does this action require a board meeting or a shareholders meeting? Or how do we actually bypass the vote of this particular shareholder in the company? Will that shareholder initiate operation mismanagement litigation against this entrepreneur? So these kind of situations arose, and we could really figure out how to apply law. So I think working with a startup has this promise for you. If you look at specializing in this, you can do work for a startup, you can move on to clients, any other kind of client also. If you want to specialize in that, you need to know that once you graduate and you want to be earning money, right? So if you're working for startups which are getting funded, they will pay you. If you're working for the investors, they will also pay you, right? So it really works out. If you're looking for startups which are run as a dhanda, as a local Indian style business, you might have to figure out how you price and bill yourself. But it's definitely a good idea to do work for a startup and have
Abhyuday,
some.
the next question that I have from you is from Kunal Chandriani, who
Yeah.
wants to know that project finance is in demand in various law firms. Can you please throw some light on the subject? What is it about, and how can the students proceed further? And he also wants to know the various career options in the field of private equity and venture capital.
That's a big question. So, okay, the simple one is private equity and venture capital. Various career options: you work with a law firm or you work with a venture capital or a private equity firm. There is no other career option. Okay, if you start independently, there are relatively few funds in India, so it'll take you time to build your reputation. You can start with a established player in the market. Second question is project finance. Again, projects deals are done by niche practices or big law firms. Okay, but the fun part about learning projects is that the documents are available online. Project finance documents are available on the World Bank website for certain, or Asian Development Bank website for certain projects they've funded. You can get project finance is usually undertaken with a project finance is financing for a project. The project is given to you by the government. So the concession agreement, that's the basic document that the government signs with you. So that is available online on the government website. So you can get a National Highway Authority of India document on the website. Okay, concession agreement. So the raw materials for this are available very easily online. And second is that you need to really think of this as how do I build. So projects, what are the projects related to? They are related to building a road, building a seaport, building a harbor, these kind of things, building a metro. So you need to think of how can I build a highway out here? Do I need to acquire this land. Okay, Highways Act has some certain provisions on acquisition of land. Is this different from from the land acquisition provisions under the Land Acquisition Act? We need to look at, does the National Highways Act apply or some other act applies? How do I deal with trees on the way? If there is a mountain, you need to look at how do I blast this out, and is there a law governing that? So these kind of things. If there's a mine underneath, how does that work? So it's really like a jigsaw puzzle. You need to look at how do I build this, how do I build that, and then find the legal requirements. You can actually imagine this on your own and do it.
And what do you have to say about the project finance and venture capital jobs that are available?
Private equity, venture capital jobs, I said, you can simply acquire the skills and work in a law firm or for a fund. That's the best idea.
All right. Abhyuday, we quickly move towards the next question, which is about the crimes and criminal litigation for that matter. That crimes have become extremely sophisticated now. We've moved from the era of petty thefts to online robberies. What is the future of criminal litigation in India? And in addition to this, if you visit any court, it wouldn't be incorrect to say that you almost feel suffocated with the number of criminal law practitioners that are there. So, what can you do to set yourself apart from the crowd of so many criminal practitioners in India?
So you have to start by looking at, does criminal law practice happen inside the court or outside? Right. So one part of it that we see is inside the court, and that is probably a fraction of it. That is the expression of the criminal law practice. But a lot of the work happens behind the scenes with a regulatory show cause notice. So earlier it was very simple: file FIR, and police will come and arrest you, and that will work, right? And it was very obvious because to identify what's a crime, because the criminal law had created things, acts which were morally bad or intuitively understandable as offenses. But when you have white collar crime and internet related crimes, so you can do something at the drop of a hat with the touch of a finger, and you're like, yeah, what is the big deal about it? And then you realize, oh shit, this is punishable under the IT Act with a huge amount of fine. Or you figure out that somebody can track you and come to arrest you. So similarly, there can be, if you have a manufacturing company and you manufacture physical products, the Weights and Measures Act prescribes certain offenses. So unless you have to mandatorily package the product in a certain way and put its weight in a certain unit. It's not like you can put kilograms where the act says grams. You can say that people can convert it very easily, divide it by 1,000. Just put a point, 3 zeros left. But you can't do that. The law says grams, so you have to write it in grams. You can't write quintals. If the law says quintals, you can't write it in kilograms. So this kind of a problem emerges, and most companies are unable to implement it to the T. So what happens is that they end up getting notices and they get a snapshot. This is what somebody I spoke to told me. And she said that they get a snapshot of an instance of their product which was violative of the law from one of the inspector or the commissioner, and then they have to, who is at risk is the director of the company straight away, because you look at the offense, and every act has this provision stating that if the offense is committed by a company, the director or the officer in charge is responsible for it, unless he or she can prove that he had no idea. Now, a director can't say he had no idea that his product was supposed to be named something, was to be measured in quintals, and it was now measured in kilograms. That process would have gone through him or been run by him, or he ought to know this. You can say you have no idea of a certain fraud being committed. You can say I gave instructions for kilograms, but what they did is they did it in quintals. But you can't say that I had no idea this was being done. Okay, so white collar crime that way becomes very important, and white collar crimes therefore money laundering related activities, internet crime, payment related issues. So this just goes on and on. And now the challenge is that for companies to understand, sorry,
Yeah, please go on.
the challenge is for a criminal lawyer to work in a company friendly way, because there will be directors don't want to be arrested even for 1 second. They don't want to go for court hearings as far as possible. They want the lawyer to manage everything. Okay, so you have to figure out the entire aspect. In certain laws, the regulatory offense can be compounded with the regulator. In certain cases, it can be settled. So you have to know all these things. And it's not just about guilty, not guilty. It's also about, in certain cases, just go through the compounding process, complete it, right? Like if you are under the RERA, now if you have a big developer under the RERA, certain acts are offenses and they can have imprisonment, but guess what? There are compounding provisions available under the state related provisions. So if you can compound it, then it's fine. So you need to know that so that you can work appropriately for the company and the sector you're working in. So criminal law gets very diverse, and you can really select which kind of crime, which kind of areas you want to work on. The other issue then becomes that can directors, after having done something abscond and very acts which you didn't think could be criminal, can have criminal consequences. For example, you take a loan from a bank for buying capital equipment, and you realize you have a funds crisis and you use it to pay salaries. Okay, then that can be termed as a misuse and misappropriation of funds. Okay, so that becomes a problem, right? And you need to know how to deal with that. What if the director escapes India? How can he escape India, or how can he be gotten back? Both sides of the issue are important for you.
All right, Abhyuday. The next question that I have is a pretty interesting question. And I'm getting this question from Pratham Sharma. It's in two parts. I'll ask both the questions at once. He wants to know that he wants to migrate to Australia. What is the best say and what area of law to focus on, as the skilled occupation list mentions very particular kind of lawyers they require? Also, how to get
Sorry,
into
you
the.
need to repeat this question about Australia. Sorry.
Okay, so
Because
he wants to basically migrate to Australia. To Australia, I'm sorry. He wants to migrate to Australia. Uh, what is the best say and what area of law to focus on, as the skilled occupation list mentions very particular kind of lawyers they require? That is number one. And secondly, he wants to know how to get into the in-house counsel of automotive company, in particular, like in the likes of BMW or Harley Davidson. For example, what's required to have an edge than any other general lawyer?
So Australia, I don't know, but if you know the list of skills that are required, it's a great idea to start from that and identify people who work in these companies in their league, or in these areas, or in these in companies in Australia in their legal teams or in Australian law firms. And you can identify. It'll be good if you can identify people from your own network, or people who are Indians and work in these companies. You can do a people search in LinkedIn and you can find. Okay, and when you find someone, LinkedIn will show you the degrees of connection you have to them. Okay, if required, take a LinkedIn premium plan and send 5 or 6 in mails so that you can connect with people and figure out what it takes to get to Australia. Okay, so if you make your search systematic like this, it might help. With companies like BMW and Harley Davidson, you want to work in. Did you want to work in India, or you wanted to work only abroad?
I think because he wants to migrate to Australia, he's probably looking at the option
I
that
don't know if
Australia.
BMW or Harley Davidson will hire you in Europe, okay, for their work. They may hire you in their India office. That is very common. Okay, for that you need to just identify when the office opens, when there are opportunities, when there is attrition happening, and there are certain kinds of laws these companies need to comply with, which you need to identify. Like, wait, which is it? I think it's legal metrology, and there are a couple of laws really which are very important for automakers. And if you know that inside out, you can really impress them in an interview or even in a casual conversation. So
All right, Abhyuday, we'll break this answer here and we'll move and we'll talk about the similar work culture, because a lot of
Aditya, can you
companies
hear
these
me?
days.
But is it
Yeah,
clear?
I can hear you. I can hear you. Yeah, much better. All right. So tell us that a lot of companies these days have like a big time checklist for what kind of employees they want, and we also see a lot of consciousness within the employees of the organization about their rights and their duties. So can labor law also be a specialization? And if yes, then what is the scope of a labor law specialist, legal specialist that is, and how can one go about it?
So labor law is a very, very important area. Okay, and typically what happens that as companies expand, uh, due to the diversity and disparity of labor laws across different states, a company's strategy needs to be standard and uniform, but labor laws of different states vary. So there is always a tension between the company policy and the applicable labor law. There are intentional and unintentional violations. Okay, and most companies just get used to a process that we'll get a notice and we have to settle, and they will informally settle these issues. But actual labor law compliance can save money for them. Secondly, it can actually, so labor law comprises a lot of things like standing orders, getting standing orders standardized, CXO level employment contracts can work. Okay, so I can combine employment law, employee stock option plans can work. So if you have a wide variety of labor law expertise on a wide variety of labor law issues, you will have a people centric company wanting to hire you. Because right from provident fund transfers to ESOP plans, to labor law compliances for different states, to standardizing different aspects of the company's employee policy, to framing the company's codes of conduct and policies around, say, issues like data security and access for people. So labor could connect to technology. A lot of these things can happen. Okay, and there are tremendous career opportunities in this. It's just that people are not used to looking at it in such a way because they don't have a resource, they don't have anything they can trust. There is no library which even has all, no single state will have all the labor laws together, right, of different states across India. That is the challenge people end up facing. So we are intending to launch in the future a labor law related diploma where these aspects will be taught. Okay, which we expect to be a game changer in terms of what you can learn about labor laws. Yeah.
All right. Abhyuday, the next question that I have for you is from Rebecca Diaz. Her question is that could you tell her the career options for media and entertainment law? How can you map yourself or your career at the undergraduate state, and what do recruiters look for? How can one better their profile? In addition to this, because I know that a lot of media experts also specialize in IPR. So I would also want to know that what are the ways in which individuals can be an IPR specialist, because a lot of students also like IPR as a subject, and what is the job description of an IPR and a media professional look like? What can students do, just like Rebecca asked, to reach that position?
That was a lot. Okay, so intellectual property law refers to specific kinds of work as intellectual property and special laws like Copyright Act, Trademark Act, Patents Act. So it's very clear cut, right? But media and entertainment is not a law, it's an industry. And this industry requires multiple sets of laws. It includes media specific media related laws. It includes, there are judgments of the Supreme Court on what kinds of matters can be reported, judgments on censorship, what needs to be censored when. There are regulations of try on, there used to be on, for example, there's a cricket match happening and let's say BCCI has auctioned the rights to broadcast to a specific private broadcaster, but there was a regulation that the national broadcaster, Doordarshan, has to be given the feed as well, or the right to capture the footage, and they can transmit it with a 2-second delay or something. Okay, so now these are all diverse set of regulations that are applicable to a media business. Okay, what you need to know to find out career opportunities is who can possibly hire me. Will a news company hire me, like NDTV or something as its in-house counsel, or will a Bloomsbury, the law publisher, hire me? Not law, the famous book publisher, hire me? Will a sports organization hire you? Will a broadcaster like Star TV, will that hire you? So you need to identify these different kinds of operators and see that, okay, what is the law they need to use. For some people, will it be something like a Geo which will hire me for its new joint venture with or acquisition deal with Savan? Okay, will I work for Netflix? So you need to figure out that what are the different kinds of work these people need to be done. The inside story about it can be common, like you may have to figure write contractual copyright licenses, Okay, that may be one part that's common, but there are many other parts which become unique to a media business. Okay, there will be some, if you are working for a newspaper like an Indian Express, there will be certain uh, Press Council of India related rules which are self-regulatory in nature. Okay, there are advertising standards which you will need to follow in placing your ads. Okay, advertisers need to comply with it, and you also need to ensure that your advertisements don't break that. So these kind of things can happen. Okay, yeah.
All right, Abhyuday. So that was that, Rebecca. I hope that answered your question. Abhyuday, in a set of skills that you were mentioning earlier, you mentioned somewhere you talked about concessional agreements and the importance of agreements that various corporate related jobs hold. Now, although we've already had a session on this, but but like we discussed, it is absolutely difficult for a law student to master the art of contract drafting right after the law school. So, how do you think that they can learn it, and what are the major demerits or merits of learning or not learning the art of contract drafting well in advance?
So contract drafting is critical in any role. Okay, if you are working independently also, when a client says I want to do this, you should be able to conceptualize what they want to do as a set of contracts. Okay, if you're working for a company wants to have maybe 10 different sets of contracts and 100 people to execute the same contract with, 1,000 people to execute the same thing with. So it should be standardized. Okay, and you should be capable of thinking a standardized kind of contract which will streamline the risk for the company, and at the same time it won't make all its vendors go away. Okay, so the skill here is twofold. One is learning how to write a contract, draft a contract, how to edit a contract, how to read a contract. Second is learning the commercials inside each category of contract. Now, learning those commercials is not easy. So the challenge used to be earlier that knowing contract law doesn't work. It's not enough. Okay, knowing the case law, again, that's not enough. You need to go a step ahead. Just having the templates doesn't work. Just learning the law, reading a book. Why it doesn't work is we've done these contract drafting exercises and marathons time and again. And you'll realize you teach someone something, they will read a book, they will read material from a course, they will see a video. Okay. When it comes to application, they will not apply it. You will be.
Abhyuday, we are talking about application. I really want to know as to what are the merits and demerits. I'm sorry to cut you short, but I really want to know what are the merits and demerits of learning or not learning contract drafting in advance.
Not learning
Very
contract drafting is suicidal because it's like you are dropping out opportunities to earn gold. Okay, because anyone can learn how to draft a contract, and Steve Jobs said everyone must know how to write code and draft a contract. Unfortunately, I don't know how to write code, but I still regard what he said very highly. So
all right.
the merit of it is that anytime, like, that is a skill you can always use to make money if you're a lawyer. Demerit, if you don't know it, man, you can't just imagine how much opportunity you're losing.
Abhyuday, I'll talk before the last question. I will talk about a question that a lot of people has asked. This question is coming from Akshat Sinha and Shilpa Narayan. A very quick answer for this: how to get into an MNC? What are the skills that one should focus on to get a job into an MNC?
So we were just discussing contract drafting skills, right? Then knowing what an in-house counsel does. So they are doing a lot of standardization of contracts. What are the problems they face? Knowing a good deal of compliance related work, what the companies need to know. Also identifying, so you can speak to people who are, let's say, junior legal managers, senior in-house counsels, like they could be general counsels, they could be legal heads, legal vice president. So you can speak to a series of people in different companies and figure out what are the problems the company is facing and what are the problems they are facing. Because if you right now are not working in a company, you have the time and you're studying, you have the time and opportunity to start learning that, the role of an in-house counsel, and then apply law to that. For example, very few people, everyone talks about contract management, but they don't know what to do when you're in this area. So you can start looking at what is actually required in contract management, how to do it. companies need a lot of work around creating compliance dashboards, ensuring that compliance calendars, compliance dashboards, managing tons of litigation. A big company can have thousands of cases going in different parts of the country. It will need to have relationships with lawyers in different courts. It will need to have relationships with different law firms. It will have to have an in-house legal team specializing in some parts of the business, for which it can't outsource the work again and again to a law firm. So you will need to have this full perspective. How do you develop this? It's by talking, figuring out, and understanding what's required. Bit by bit by bit, you realize that you develop a greater understanding. What you need to know is basics of contract, compliance, and litigation. All three.
All right, Abhyuday, that was that. But now I'll come to the final question. Ladies and gentlemen who are watching us right now, I talked about the big reveal that we were about to have in the last 5 minutes of our show. It's exactly that time. Abhyuday, congratulations on launching 3 new diploma courses, and you're about to launch 4 more courses. From our sources, we got to know. So, what is the thought behind providing such diploma courses and 7 diploma courses to the students? How are they different from the regular courses, and how can the students benefit from them?
So the real opportunity in having a private diploma which you start on your own is that a lot of students focus on different kinds of exercises, and career driven knowledge can be applied here. So we have a number of short courses already running on courses.lawsikho.com, where the idea is that you learn about a certain area of law. So you take a technology contracts course, you learn about how technology contracts work. But now we've taken this a step forward. So with the LawSikho diploma, what happens is that if you take that diploma up, you will know the whole gamut of things there. So we have a contract drafting course, but when we have the contract drafting diploma with dispute resolution, you will know the entire scheme of contracts in about 8 or 9 different sets in sectors. So 10 contracts in 8 different sectors, which is the kind of the volume of business and commercial insight you will acquire will be phenomenal, and you will be adept at that kind of work. Same way it works with the cyber law diploma. You have cyber law, fintech, and technology contracts, everything covered in that. So that's one whole area covered. So you do a diploma, you're ready for a particular kind of career option. And this kind of a journey started with when we first launched a business law diploma with NUJS, where we realized the reason, one of the greatest reasons for its success was that it enabled people to pursue one kind of career, which is be an extraordinary business lawyer. So now what we're doing is we are we are creating different career options based on what people want. We are creating diplomas for those career options. So you take a diploma, your career on that area is sorted. That's the idea. I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Abhyuday, before we end this show, I want a really quick one-liner answer from you for 2 questions. One is from Arvind Athithian, whose question is, what are the career options in taxation after GST? And one is from Kshitij Agarwal, who wants to know, for someone interested in international law, arbitration, and corporate M&A, how can someone balance out the same while being in a law school? Is there any field which incorporates all of them? A liner answer for
The
both
first
questions.
question is on
GST.
so
Career options after GST.
career option after GST. Everyone is all the time struggling with GST litigation and compliance. Okay, if you know it inside out, you need to do the work that CAs don't do. So CAs do blanket registration and compliance. Now you need to find out what are the problems companies are still facing. Okay, and what are the problems CAs are being unable to solve. Usually it would be the stuff that requires you to interpret law and that requires you to adjust the application of law based on the situation. Okay, where there is no computation and filing work, there is basically a discretionary work involved. So GST related litigation will be really important. Okay, GST related strategy, if you can provide a big company, that will make sense. Okay, so you can work with a major tax firm on that. That is fine. That can be a career option. You can work in-house in the department of a company also. Or you could be a litigator. Second question.
The next question is from Kshitish Agarwal, who wants to know that for someone interested in international law, international arbitration, and corporate law M&A, what is one field which incorporates all of them, if there is a field?
These are absolutely three different directions. The only thing is that corporate law M&A can be connected with international commercial arbitration. Okay, but you can learn all three in your law school. Okay, it is not difficult at all, and only when you are acquiring market insight that will take you some time. But you can have your eyes and ears open on all three. That's the advantage of studying in law school and knowing what you want to do.
All right,
Can't hear.
Abhyuday, can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, Abhyuday. So thank you so much for being a part of this today. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on this show. For everybody who's watching us, this was an hour with LawSikho for today. For all the questions that were left out, we will take them again with Abhyuday next week. Same time, we will link all the web links of the online courses available in the description below. Do not miss on the deadlines. Be the first sign-ups of these courses and get unparalleled advantages. For now, this is me, Aditya, signing off. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And for any queries, doubts, or feedbacks on the show or courses, write to me at aditya@iPleaders.in. Thank you so much for today. Till then, out, LawSikho. Thank you,
Thank you,
Abhyuday.
Aditya. It was very exciting to be here and hope to see
Thank
you
you.
all again.